Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Vice Schwartz deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at Spy Family, the most recent English edition release. This is going to be an 8-gate deck focused on Fiona and Loid. Before we jump into the deck itself, just a reminder as always, this is meant to be a starting point to work off of and may not be fully optimized for a specific meta. You should test this for yourself and make any changes that you find necessary to fit your own playstyle or local meta. The deck we've got here, as I said, we're using the Fiona level 1 and Loid level 3 combos. So we're not focusing a whole lot on most of the change packages in the set. More just playing a straightforward deck with Fiona being our only changer. This is 3 colors, and the color spread is a little tight, as you can see here. We have a huge chunk of blue with only a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green. We can take a look at some alternatives as we move on to maybe fix that color spread if you don't feel comfortable playing with only 8 and 10 for colors that you're going to need here. Taking a look at the first card we're playing, we have 4 copies of Full Metal Lady Sylvia. This is basically the reason that we're playing 8-gate. This card is insanely powerful, and as you can see, both of our climaxes are going to work for its first effect, on play from a hand, or when put into waiting room from stage. You can discard a climax with a gate trigger to look at up to 5 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 1 Burlant character, reveal it, put it in hand, and put the rest in waiting room. This basically makes it impossible to flood on gate triggers, which is, a common issue with them since they just add more climaxes back to your hand. It makes it so that it never feels bad adding extra climaxes to your hand. You don't have to worry about them clogging. You can get, 1 copy of Sylvia here is going to filter you through 2 extra climaxes that you have stock and get you through 10 cards in deck. So fixes your hand and fixes your deck state so that you're not going to be eating a ton of damage, hopefully. Second effect on it, also very powerful. On attack, you can either choose to put the top card of your stock into waiting room, so pay 1, or put the top card of your deck into your clock. If you do either, you perform a trigger check 2 times on the trigger step. So we have basically 4 effects here, right? We have on play hand filter, on death hand filter, on attack pay 1 twin drive, on attack clock yourself twin drive, and you get so much utility out of these, so many options. And twin driving, obviously, it's good in the middle of the game, later in the game, but you can pay out a stock if you trigger a climax in order to twin drive, so you're effectively cleaning a stock out. At any point, you can clock yourself to get an extra stock because you're trigger checking twice. Trigger checking these gives you higher chance of triggering your gate triggers, which can help you get climaxes to hand for your climax combos, or just extra card advantage to hand that you can then discard to Sylvia's effects. Filter your deck for other cards you're looking for. This card is honestly just absolutely insane, and basically the reason that we're playing the 8-gate variant of the deck instead of the gate choice build that Japan seemed to prefer most of the time. Second card we have here is Telepath Girl Anya, also at 4 copies. This is our Brainstorm for the deck. The reason that we're playing this Brainstorm instead of any of the others is for its first effect. When your other character is placed on the stage by change, that character gets plus 1000 power until end of turn. One of the themes of the Spy Family set as a whole is change effects. You can see here 3 of the main level 3s that all have change effects back and forth into each other. We aren't playing any of these though. We are instead just playing the Fiona level 1s as our changers, but those are still enough that it makes this Anya Brainstorm super worthwhile. The 1000 power lasts until the end of the next turn, so you'd have to remember if you are changing like say you change at the end of your turn, at your encore step, the power that the new 1-0 is going to get is going to last through your opponent's turn. When you change at your opponent's encore step, that power is going to last through your turn. So it gives you super high offensive lines, super high defensive lines. These do stack, so obviously early in the game, if we can get 2 Anya in our back row, that's going to be 2000 power to basically our whole board, and 2000 global is just insane. The Brainstorm effect itself is just a standard pay 1, rest of this card, Brainstorm 4. For each climax, we're going to choose 1 Burlant character in waiting room and return it to hand. So easy consistency, easy pluses. Next we have 4 copies of Extremely Skilled Assassin Yor. This card has on play from hand, reveal top card of deck. If that card is a work call or Burlant character, this card gets plus 2000 power until its turn, making it 3500. decent for clearing our opponent's oversizes. Work Call is an event that we do not play, more meant for the Your top end focus decks. It allows you to summon the Your finisher from your hand early, but obviously we're not playing Your finisher, so we don't have to worry about that. Instead, we're mostly looking at the second effect on the card. On play from hand, we can pay 1, put the top card of our deck into clock, search deck for a level 1 or lower character, reveal it, put it in hand. This can be used early in the game to get our Brainstorm if we don't have it yet. That way we can make huge power lines at level 1. Obviously, it can get our level 1 combo like most decks are going to be doing with these effects. We really want 3 copies of the Fiona combo so that we can fill our entire board with them. This does a huge job of helping us get there. And if you don't need either of those, or neither of those are options, or if you specifically need hand fix, you can search any of the plethora of hand fix options. Obviously, Sylvia being the one that we've talked about so far. Next, we have 2 copies of Moment at Home Loid. This is from the trial deck. On play from hand, pay 1, discard 1, search your deck for a Burlink character. This is a standard drop search. Typically, you might not see these as much in decks that already have like really high counts of other searchers, but being able to discard actually has some upside in this deck over your being able to clock ourselves to search, and that is in that our level 1 game, the Fiona Changers, we are actually going to need the 10500 power Hospital Staff Fiona in our waiting room in order to start changing. So being able to discard means that if we draw Hospital Staff, we can discard it to search for Nightfall Fiona in order to set up both our hand for level 1 combo and our waiting room for the encore step changes. Next, we have 2 copies of Assassin Yor, also from the trial deck. This card is just another green way to hand fix. This one, however, acts as an oversize, 0/2000. If all your characters are Burlent, which I promise they should always be, this becomes a 3500 power with when this card's battle opponent becomes reversed, choose a Burlent character in your waiting room, return it to your hand, choose 1 card in your hand, put it into your waiting room. This is just another way to hand fix. It's another way to discard out the Hospital Staff Fiona, or just any other level 3s or whatever we don't want. Kind of fills the same role as the drop search, a little less selectivity, but it's a better turn 1 play because it's 3500 power. It's also relevant that both of these cards are green because our green count is low and we do need green for some of our other cards that we want to play. Once again, another hand fix card. We have 2 copies of Bullet Signifying the End, Twilight. This is a 0/15 on play from hand, reveal top card of your deck. If it's Burlent character, put it in hand, choose a card in your hand, discard. And act ability. Discard 1, put this into waiting room, choose a Burlent character in waiting room, and return it to hand. Again, this is just more ways. If we can basically never flood on gates with all these hand fixes, we can get rid of early cards that we draw level 3s that we just don't want. We can get Hospital Staff into waiting room. We can find our level 1 combo. Just all the stuff that all these cards are doing, right? It's just lots of redundancy in different forms. So basically we have different ways to access. Some of them get decks, some of them get waiting room, some of them are top check ads, and it's basically going to mean that we always have access to any zone that we want. And this one, unfortunately, blue is a color that we don't need as much, but being a double hand fix built into a single card and selective waiting room access in main phase is really good for us. Next, we have a Climax swap. This is just super standard. 0/25 on play, pay 1, discard Climax, add a Climax from waiting room to hand. We hopefully shouldn't need this super often because of our gate triggers, but sometimes you do just draw the wrong one or don't have the right one in waiting room yet when you trigger a gate. So we have the Climax swap. You just always want one of these. Last level 0 we play is Lit by Moonlight Yor, another 0/2500. This is act, discard 2 and put this at the bottom of your deck to choose a Burlent character with level equal to or lower than your level in your waiting room and put it in the stage position that this card was in. This is not really something to do at level 0. This is to help our finisher line. Our finisher that we play costs 2 stock to play and 2 stock to use its combo, meaning we would need 10 stock starting main phase to be able to play 3 of it, but none of its effects cost any hand. By using this Yor, we can sort of spread out our resources and spend extra hand instead of that 2 stock to play the Twilight from hand, which means that we can more feasibly, instead of needing, say 10 stock and 4 cards in hand, we can convert that to what would that be, like 8 stock and 6 cards in hand, which is a little more feasible. Just spreading out resources is always nice to be able to spend them a little more easily. And obviously with all the hand fakes we have, this should be pretty accessible by the time we get to level 3 if we need it. So 1 copy is perfectly fine. Moving into our level 1s, we pretty much just have our combo. This is a Nightfall Fiona Frost. This is a 1/0 3000. During your turn, gets 3000 power, so it's 1/0 6k. It'll be 7 when we play the Climax. Climax combo is on attack if Silent Passion in her heart is in your Climax area, and you have another Burlent character. Look at up to 3 cards on the top of your deck. Choose up to 1 Burlent character, reveal it, put it into your hand, and put the rest in any order on the top of your deck. That is very different from most of these combos. Normally they're going to be putting the rest of the cards into Waiting Room. Putting them on top of the deck is insanely powerful. It does have the one downside of we need hospital staff in Waiting Room, so if you find it in top 3, you can't send it there. But, that being said, being able to know exactly what we're going to trigger on our next attack so that we can choose whether to front or side, for example. Being able to know what we're going to send to stock, maybe if there's a card that we don't want getting buried in our stock, you know, you're putting 2 cards back on top, so you get to choose which one will be top, which one's bottom. If there's a card that we don't want to trigger into our stock, we can put it as the second card so that we're not triggering it. And if you have enough of these Fiona level 1s, right, if you have 3 of them, so that your last attack, both your first attack and last attack are going to be able to rearrange. Say you attack with the first one and see a Climax, and you don't want to trigger that Climax. If you put it bottom, you don't trigger it. Attack with the next Fiona, look at top 3, put it back to the bottom, you don't trigger it. Attack with the last one, put it to the bottom, you don't trigger it. What happens on your opponent's turn? Their first attack is a guaranteed cancel. This is something that the decks that play what you might hear referred to as Mocha finishers from Bang Dream Girl Spam Party, they like to do this to sort of rearrange their climaxes to end up on top of their deck at end of turn, so they'll always get a cancel. It's really good at level 3. It's even better at level 1, especially when you get to do this for multiple turns by looping combo. Overall, like, I don't know who thought this combo was a good idea. This is just an absolutely insane pushed card. And as a result, you're probably going to see it as the level 1 combo in basically every Spy Family deck out there. It's just decent selectivity, top 3, and gives us way more control than we have any right to have. Next effect on the card, as if it needed more text. Beginning of Encore Step, if it's rested, you can choose a marker underneath it or Hospital Staff Fiona in your Waiting Room. Put it on the stage position that this card is on as rest, and then put this card face up underneath the Hospital Staff Fiona as a marker. So we get to change. This is why we need Hospital Staff in Waiting Room. We want Nightfall on our turn and Hospital Staff on the opponent's turn. What does Hospital Staff do, you're asking? Well, it's a 1/0/500, which doesn't seem great to have on the opponent's turn. But if you have 2 or more other Burlent characters, during your turn, this card gets plus 4,000 power. During your opponent's turn, this card gets plus 6,000 power. This means that if you do have to play Hospital Staff during your turn because you couldn't discard it or couldn't get a 3rd copy of Nightfall, it's still 5,500 with Climax, which is good enough to kill level 0s at the very least. And then it'll be 6,500 on defense, but you really do want to be bringing this out by change effect so that your brainstorms can pump it to 7,500 or even 8,500. At the end of this card's battle opponent's attack, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them on top of your deck in any order. This is similar to the effect that the 2/2 Toka had in the Standby Data Live deck back in, what was that, 2021? That was very powerful and got restricted. That let you rearrange 2. This lets you rearrange 3, which gives you a ton of info. Obviously, if all 3 are clean, it doesn't let you mill them, so you're still going to take that damage. But if you look at top 3 and see a Climax, you know, if your opponent played a Climax, right, obviously they're attacking for at least 2 damage. Instead of it maybe ending up as the top card of your deck and you cancel on 1, you can move it down to cancel on 2, which means you're getting more value out of your sort of deck speed there. You can also use it if you want to maybe take specific colors as damage over others. You can move those cards into the positions that you'll be taking as damage. This is especially relevant if your opponent's only attacking for like 1. because they didn't play a climax maybe. Which can again help. Our colors are really tight in this deck, so that's pretty good. And lastly, if you have 3 of this Hospital Staff Fiona, your opponent has to attack one of them last. And if they attack it last, you get to pick out of your top 3 what you're drawing for turn, which is probably the most powerful thing that this card allows you to do, is control your draw per turn. Essentially, since you're seeing 3 cards, you see your entire draw and clock draw, which means if you're only looking for one specific card, you can skip out on the part where you clock yourself in order to just get the card you wanted, which saves you a damage at the cost of not getting the extra 1 card to hand. Alternatively, if you see climaxes on top, well, if you see your level 1 climax, you're probably just putting it on top to draw for turn and then go for climax combo. But say you see the level 3 climax on top, put it second, so you draw for turn, and then you can brainstorm with Anya, and you're guaranteed to hit because you know it was there. It's again just insanely powerful information tools that let you do a lot of powerful plays that other decks just wish they could do. And once again, as if this card needed more text, we have a change effect. At the beginning of your opponent's encore step, if this card is rest, you can choose a marker underneath this card or a Nightfall Fiona Frost from your waiting room. Put it on the stage position this card is on as rest. If you do, put this card face up underneath that character as a marker. So again, we're going to have Hospital Staff on the opponent's turn, switch into Nightfall at the end of opponent's turn going into our turn. So we're going to attack with our climax combo, get card advantage, switch into Hospital Staff, get a ton of information on defense with a hopefully like 1-0-85. That's pretty hard for the opponent to answer. It's also nice that these specify they can choose from markers underneath them or waiting room. Most of these 1-0s that change back and forth struggle with refresh timing, where some of the change targets will get shuffled back into the deck, and they'll no longer be able to change. Because these can pick from markers and they marker themselves, you never have to worry about that. Once you get it started, it'll always be able to go until they die. Last level 1 we play is just a backup to help protect our level 1 game. This is a 1/1 1000 backup. It's pay 1, discard this for a 2000 power backup. And when you use this card's backup, if all of your characters are Burlent trait, you may put the top card of your deck into your stock. These are pretty typical counters that they print nowadays, but in this deck it has some extra sort of powerful text. Because Hospital Staff is letting us rearrange the top 3 cards of our deck after every attack, we can know what this is stocking off the top, meaning we'll never have to worry about stocking a climax, and we can actually sort of maybe save this for an attack where we know that all of our damage might be clean and sort of dig for a chance to cancel even if our opponent is swinging for 3 or more. It means, like, we already wanted to play this counter, right? If Fiona's a 75 or 85, this counter is making it a 95 or 10-5, which should be winning basically every lane at level 1. But it's just even extra sort of utility on top of that, which makes it great. Moving into level 2s, we have Matching Keychain Becky. This is a 2/1 5000. First effect, if this card is in your backstage, all of your other Telepath Girl Anya get the following ability. All of your other Burlent characters get 1500 power. So it's effectively a global 15, but it requires that you have the Anya. And it gives all of your other Anya the ability. So technically, say you're at level 1, right? And you have 2 Anyas in the back row so that your Fionas are 9/5, and then you go to level 2. You can actually push one of those Anyas up, play this Becky, and now you have a global 3000 to board, since all of your Anyas are getting the 1500 global, which is, you know, pretty sweet. It means that the one Anya is only 3k. It's not gaining all 3000, but you get to make your other 2 lanes really big, which can help answer any early plays that your opponent might have put down going into level 2. Otherwise, just a lot of power. We basically want to replace one of our Anyas with this anyway as soon as we hit level 1. Or level 2, sorry, since 1500 global is stronger than the 1000 we get from changing. Just an extra 500 power to our board. Second effect is, at the beginning of your climax phase, you can discard 2 to deal 1 damage to your opponent. This is... it smells expensive, but it's pretty decent. You're not just running this out like every turn, but you can use it to extend your reach on your finisher turn, since once again our finisher only costs stock and doesn't need any additional hand. This just gives us something to feed whatever leftover hand we have into increasing the power of our kill turn. Last effect is Act. You can discard a copy of itself and rest this card to search your deck for up to one copy, or up to one Burlent character. Reveal it, put it in hand, and shuffle your deck. This means that we can afford to run 3 copies of this card like we're doing, without having to worry about it clogging. Typically, back row assists like this, you might only want 1 or 2. But we can afford to play 3, which means often we'll have to probably level a copy of itself just to color fix for it, since we only have 8 total yellow cards. But if we do put one down and draw a second one, we can turn it into whatever we want, which is honestly better than just drawing random cards. Like, it's basically the best card we could draw since it turns into anything, whatever we need for the scenario. And being able to play those extra copies means we'll have it for level 2 more consistently to increase our power lines. So overall, just great card, lots of text. However, it does require you to have yellow to be able to play it, and if yellow is so tight that we're considering leveling a copy of itself, maybe you don't want to bother with your colors being sort of that sketchy. If you want to cut yellow entirely and just play blue and green cards, you can play the Bond Forger 2-1 instead. This has the same exact effect that gives all of your Anya Brainstorms the plus 1500 global. Instead of dealing 1 damage to your opponent and being able to hand filter though, it just has rest itself to look at the top card of your opponent's deck, put it on top or into waiting room. This basically just lets you confirm like 1 damage on the top is going to be clean. And if you see a climax on top, you can mill it. So it's not as powerful overall, but it is still a pretty decent card. Next, we have a backup at level 2, confirmed for supplementary classes Anya. This is an anti-change backup. It's pay 1, discard it for a 2500 power backup, and when you back up, pay 2, sack a character to choose one of your opponent's characters that's a higher level than your opponent and put it into your opponent's waiting room. Pretty standard cost, pretty standard effect. We like the card in this deck because our level 1 game is big enough that for most decks, they're probably not going to be able to answer it consistently until they hit level 2 and are able to early play. And this gives us a way to threaten their early plays if they want to frontal to kill our Fionas. Now, Fiona is a level 1, so the opponent can pretty easily side attack with their early plays to sort of just dodge the counter, but that reduces the amount of damage that we're taking, so we're fine with it anyway. If this card only exists as a threat for that purpose, then that's good enough. It is also a 2500 backup, so our Fionas are big enough that even if our opponent hard plays level 2s to try to kill them, this might be good enough to win that lane regardless. Last level 2 that we're playing is Excited Feeling Anya. This is a 2-1 6000. If you have 2 or more other Burlent characters, this gets plus 4000 power, so 10k cross turn is pretty reasonable stat line if we do have to field this and attack with it. It's 11-5 if we have the global in the back. And then the main reason we're playing it, on play from hand, pay 1, discard 1 if we have another Burlent character. Your opponent chooses 1 climax in their waiting room, returns all cards except that card from their waiting room to their deck, and shuffles. This is basically just another way to help our finisher turns against compressed decks, especially those that sort of just stumble into the compression by refreshing, milling through some cards in their deck, and none of those cards being climaxes. Or, you know, if your opponent refreshes and then starts paying out all of their stock for their level 3s or whatever and healing, they're probably going to have, 10 cards in waiting room at that point that were maybe 1 climax. If you're shuffling back the 9 clean cards, that's really going to hurt their compression and help increase our chances of sticking damage. We don't have stock swap in this set, unfortunately, so stock compression decks may still be too much for us to get through sometimes, but this is the best we've got, so we're going to make use of it. Moving into level 3s, we'll start with our early play, since this can come down at level 2. 3-8k, if your waiting room has 2 or less climax, this card gets -1 level while in your hand. Pretty typical early play condition, and pretty easy to obtain in this deck if you need it, just because of the amount of deck control that things like Sylvia can give us. On play from hand, this is where the card gets pretty interesting, pretty unlike other early plays. First thing you do is put the top card of your clock into waiting room, so we get to heal, which is very normal for early plays. But then we get to choose one of the following effects and perform it. First option is if we have 4 or more other Burlent characters, so a full board, we can put the top card of our deck into stock. And again, if we used the hospital staff Fiona to rearrange our top 3, we might just know what we're putting from the top of deck into stock. Second option is pay 1, discard a Burlink character to put the top card of Clock into Waiting Room, so we can get a second heal. And the third option is to just gain 3,000 power. You're probably not going to be choosing the third option unless there's something that you just really need to clear off your opponent's board, and you don't need the stock, and you're at 0 clock. Otherwise, you're probably picking to either heal and then gain a stock back in order to meet your resource thresholds for your finisher, or you're choosing to heal twice. If your level 1 combo is living on defense often enough, it is possible that you're not going to have the board space to play multiple early plays like some decks would. And in that case, playing 1 copy of this and being able to heal twice is pretty convenient. Lastly, we have our finisher, Agent Twilight. This is a 3/2 9500 with effectively just 1 line of text. He has a climax combo. When this card attacks, if accomplishing missions in style is in your climax area and your hand has 6 or less cards, you may pay 2. If you do, deal 3 damage to your opponent. If that damage is cancelled, you may deal 1 damage to your opponent. So this is similar to, say, Marine from Hololive, where you're dealing 3 damage on attack. But we have the added benefit of, even if that 3 cancels, we might deal 1 damage to our opponent. Basically means that we have really good kill reach. You know, you play 3 of this, you have 6 3s total between your 3 attacks and 3 burns. If one of the burns cancels, you have 5 more 3s and a 1. 3 plus 3 plus 1 is 7, right? That kills from 3-0 if your opponent was level 3 and tried to heal down. Otherwise, it's still reasonable reach without that. So, good finisher, resource efficient. Doesn't cost hand, which lets us sort of move into things like the Becky for extra burns, or the level 0 Yor that we looked at to summon this more easily to help with stock thresholds. And just good overall. It's nothing broken, but it's powerful enough. Second effect on it is beginning of Encore Step if this card is Rest. You can do the same change thing as the Fiona. It changes into Perfect Father Loid, which heals on play. We're not playing that card though. There is an event that would allow you to early play this Perfect Father Loid, I believe, or Agent Twilight. It early plays one or the other. We're not really playing it. We don't care for that to be our level 2 game. We would rather just keep looping Fiona. Instead, we're just using the Agent Twilight as our finisher. We just want to stockpile these in hand, dump 3 of them on our opponent at level 3, and end the game. Last things we got are our climaxes. Obviously, Silent Passion in Her Heart, comboing with our level 1 combo, Nightfall, Fiona Frost, and accomplishing missions in style, comboing with the most stylish dad of all time, Agent Twilight. With the deck as a whole, I like this deck a lot. It's pretty good. It does have a lot of upsides in the sort of information, like deck information category, which is pretty fitting for a spy set. Among its other pros, you have a ton of good hand-fixing utility at level 0 to make up for the 8-gate lineup that I'm sure terrifies some people, including myself. We have change effects that aren't waiting room reliant, which just instantly makes us better than every other deck that wants to be changing back and forth at any point in the game. And a powerful finisher with a pretty efficient cost that means it's realistic to try field a pretty reasonable amount of the time. Downsides of the deck, however, 8 gate triggers will ruin your day at least once, even if not by just forcing you into major decompression. Triggering one of these, you know, say you have 1 in play, you might even have 1 in hand, and you trigger one of these, like, you can't add another one to hand, because you're just, like, refreshing 4, and that seems to happen a lot with gate triggers, unfortunately. Can't really do much about that, but oh well. We also don't have many powerful plays at level 0. A lot of our level 0 line is utility cards, and they are very powerful utility cards, but they're not things that are winning the game at level 0. Kind of the best thing we have is the 3500 Assassin Yor, and that's not fantastic. And lastly, our level 2 game does rely on Fiona sticking around. We do have the early play family, but since we're not playing the event to bring out Loid or Agent Twilight early, we're pretty much just trying to loop level 1 combo until we get to our finisher, and that is usually done by having Fiona live. If our opponent has things to clear her, it's not great for us. closer look at the deck if you want to see all the cards. And again, you can check out the deck log for this at the code in the bottom right. That is D3SV. And yeah, I mean, I just really like this deck. I know it's not the sort of primary build that Japan played. They usually played the Anya finisher instead of Loid, with a lot of the similar utility cards. But I think 8-gate giving us access to Sylvia just makes this super powerful. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate the support, and we should have some more videos like this coming out soon. Again, we're going to be having Weiss Schwarz deck profiles and Shadowverse Evolved deck profiles if you're interested in either of those. There should be a couple videos on the screen right now for you to click if you want to check out some more now. Otherwise, we will see you next time.